The history of America can be seen through the eyes of baseball. Hall of Fame broadcaster Jon Miller has seen a lot during his time as Giants radio play-by-play man and broadcasting games on TV for ESPN. But one road trip stands out the most for Miller. Jon takes us through the days and weeks of the aftermath following the tragic events of 9/11 during the 2001 baseball season. Jon describes the range of emotions that surrounded the Giants team on their road trip and their subsequent return to San Francisco and the toll it took on the players, coaches, and fans.
Well, the Giants were on a road trip, and at that time they had just played a game on a Sunday in Denver. Barry Bonds hit 3 home runs. That was the season that Bonds would rewrite the home run record books. And then the Giants went on to Houston and had a day off. And my daughter called me from California and told me to turn on the TV, and she was very upset, crying, and I couldn't figure out what she was talking about. It didn't make sense to me. Those kinds of things, I think, we were not able to comprehend the enormity of it. So I turned on the TV, and there it was, as we all experienced it, mostly, except those who were in that vicinity at the time. Through television, and then we were stuck in Houston. The airports were closed, and nobody flew for a few days. And the commissioner of baseball had been called by President Bush, and he was urging Major League Baseball to restart the season as soon as possible because he thought it would be part of the healing process, something that could divert people's attention. But the Giants had a meeting. Rich Aurilia, I believe, was the Giants player rep at the time. And they met and said, well, we all want to just go home as soon as possible and be with our families. And Richie, of course, was from Brooklyn. And he knew people who were in those buildings that day. He could see those buildings from his old neighborhood in Brooklyn. So it was a very personal reaction for Rich Aurilia. But all the players, and I don't think it was just the Giants clubhouse, but they all wanted to be home with their families at that time. So it was a very emotional time and a very raw emotions. The Giants finally were able to get a charter flight to leave Houston. In fact, they were the first flight to leave the Houston airport after September the 11th. And it was finally agreed that the baseball players were like everybody else. They needed time to have with their families, to in many cases to grieve, and then they would be happy to give their best to be part of the healing process. So the season was delayed about a week, and the Houston Astros were in San Francisco, and that's the night that they restarted the season, and they had a very moving and touching ceremonies at the ballpark that night involving the players from both teams. And then after all of that, and some grieving and respects being paid and whatnot, then we started the ball game, and the moment I think that really brought it back to people that this is baseball. Enjoy. Andres Galarraga hit one of the longest home runs we've ever seen hit, and all of a sudden everybody cheered and let it loose, which is what baseball's real place is all about. Well, in New York, really everybody in New York was on the front lines of this war, and I was able to, and I feel honored that I had a chance to do it. Go to New York in October and was there most of the month. The Yankees went all the way through the postseason into the World Series, and when the games restarted, both the Yankees and the Mets had a part of helping people remove themselves from the pain and the suffering. Mike Piazza ended up hitting a game-ending home run for the Mets in that first game back. And many of the players from both teams were involved in relief efforts and bringing supplies to people and that sort of thing before the games restarted again. And then in the postseason, I think the Yankees' run to the World Series was a great part of the healing. Yankee Stadium in that postseason, it was like the world's largest block party every night. And that ballpark was never more alive, and it's a really live ballpark anyway. And, that postseason I will never forget.
The Yankees upended the winningest team in American League history, the 116-46 Seattle Mariners, 4-1 to win the pennant. The Yankees then went undefeated at home during the World Series with two dramatic comebacks in Games 4 and 5 before ultimately losing to the Diamondbacks in 7 games. The Yankees didn't win at all that season, but did something much more important for New York and the rest of the country. They created a sense of community as the country healed from the vicious attack of 9/11. U.S. History Through the Eyes of Baseball, brought to you by AmericanInnings.org.